Did you know that people once believed that if you looked through a hag stone, you could see things that weren't meant to be seen? Hi guys, welcome back to Curious Bunny. In this series, we'll explore strange and forgotten stories from British folklore and bring them back to life with art. In each episode, I'll tell you the strange stories from this folklore while I paint alongside. And if you'd like to own any art inspired by folklore, you'll find my shop link below. So today we'll be exploring another curious piece of folklore, the Hag Stone.
Depending on where you are in Britain, this stone goes by a few different names. So it can go by witch stone, adder stone, holy stone, and unlike the church grim, this isn't a creature or a ghost, it's just a stone with a hole worn naturally through the middle. You can still find them today, washed up on beaches all over Britain, and if you do spot one, you'll probably think, oh, that's a cool stone, and maybe you pop it in your pocket without thinking much more of it. But a few hundred years ago, finding these meant something entirely different. There's a belief that runs right through British folklore that running water carries a kind of power, that it can cleanse and protect and carry harmful things away, almost like a border between our world and whatever lies beyond it. So as water slowly wore a hole through the stone, people believed that it left a little bit of this protection power behind inside the rock itself. Which means that a hagstone was never really just a stone, shaped by this moving water over hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It had become something else entirely. And that's one of my favourite things about folklore. It quietly rewrites the ordinary. A woodland feels a little different when you know about the Green Man. A churchyard doesn't look the same after you've heard about the church grim. And after all this, I don't think I'll walk along a beach again without checking all the pebbles. Because hagstones weren't just admired, they were used, and in some pretty different corners of life. One of the places hagstones turn up most in folklore is by the coast, which makes sense to me. If there was ever a job where you'd want a little extra luck on your side, it was probably sailing. Picture arriving at the harbour. It's just before sunrise. The air's cool, the tide's creeping up against the pier, and a few lanterns are still glowing while the village is slowly stirring awake. The nets have been checked, the supplies have been packed, the weather looks fair enough, though anyone who's spent real time at sea can know how fast that can turn. And before you untie the boat, there's just one last thing. Hanging from the rigging, swaying gently in the boat's movement, there's a small stone with a hole in it. It's always been there. Your father sailed with one, so did his father before him, and nobody remembers exactly when it first appeared. Maybe it was found on the shore years ago, maybe it was given as a parting gift. Either way, by now it feels as much a part of the boat as the mast. According to folklore, hagstones were thought to guard boats against storms and bad luck. Some fishermen tied them straight onto the nets, hoping for a good catch, or hoping to keep misfortune from following them out onto the sea. I like imagining someone pausing at the harbour and glancing at the stone swinging in the wind and feeling just slightly steadier when they push off. When you're heading out to something as vast as the sea, I feel like you'll take whatever luck you can carry. I think a lot of these stories, instead of just being about magic, I think a lot of them are about hope. If you'd spent your life watching neighbours vanish into storms or come home with empty nets, you'd probably cling to a small tradition too. Something that reminded you that someone somehow has your back. And it wasn't only sailors who trusted in hagstones. Further inland, they found their way into stables, barns and farmyards. So imagine a small farm a few hundred years ago. No supermarket down the road, no insurance if something goes wrong. Everything your family has depends on the handful of animals waiting outside each morning. You step out before the sun's properly up. The grass is still damp, a robin darts across the yard, a cow's calling somewhere in the distance, but something's off in the stable. Your old mare looks tired, fed and healthy, but restless, and her mane is tangled in knots you brushed smooth the night before. We would probably blame the wind today, but old folklore has another explanation: elf locks or witches' stirrups. The belief was that while the village slept, witches rode horses across the countryside under cover of darkness, returning them before dawn, exhausted and manes tangled as proof of the journey. I don't know if people truly expected to catch a witch mid-ride, but if you believed your horse had become an unwilling mount, you would want it stopped. So a hag stone would be hung from a beam in the stable, maybe found in a nearby stream years ago, or maybe it's been there protecting the farm for generations already. And it wasn't only horses, cattle mattered just as much, and there are old tales from around Britain of witches stealing milk without ever setting foot in the cowshed. And it was thought they did this through an enchanted rope or a simple stool, pulling milk from thin air as though drawing it straight from a neighbour's cow miles away. It sounds impossible, and yet you can imagine the farmyard gossip, leaning over the fences of their fields and whispering once one family's cows dried up, while another's herd seemed a little too fortunate. So a hag stone would hang in the barn too, not just against illness, but against anything unseen that might quietly take away what a family depended on. And that's what I love about these old beliefs, really. They're really about kings or heroes. They're about ordinary people trying to protect ordinary things. So a good harvest, healthy animals, enough milk for the children, a safe walk home. There's something quite comforting in that. But there's another really sweet use of the hag stone, not out at sea or in a stable, but beside a cradle. A big widespread belief in folklore across Britain and Ireland is the changeling, which is the belief that the fairy folk sometimes envied healthy human babies, and if the chance arose, they might steal one away and leave one of their own in its place. And it sounds like something out of a fairy tale now, but these stories were told in one form or another in villages right across the country. So imagine you're a new mother and it's evening, the fire's burned low, the cottage has gone quiet, and your baby is finally asleep after a long day. And you're lingering by the cradle, not because something is wrong, just because that's what parents do. And you are tucking the baby in and you glance up, and hanging from a nail above the cradle is a smooth stone with a hole through the centre. Maybe your own mother gave it to you when the baby was born and told you to hang it there at night just in case. According to folklore, hag stones were thought to guard babies from unwanted visitors, keeping the fairies and the wandering spirits at bay after dark. Whether it was the stone itself or simply the comfort of knowing you've done what you could, it's easy to see why families would hold on to traditions like this. Across every story, sailor, farmer, mother, the thread is the same. Nobody was chasing treasure or adventure with these stones. It was always something quieter, keeping the people you love safe. And that brings me to the part of the story that's inspired today's painting. Because a hag stone wasn't only believed to protect you from the unseen, some said it could also reveal it. Imagine it's late evening and the sun has set and the sky is kind of turning that soft grey bluey colour just before night. You're walking along a path you know very well, You go past the old oak tree, along the hedge, over the little stone bridge. Everything is exactly as it always is. Or so it seems. You put your hand in your pocket and you brush against something cold and smooth in your pocket. It's your Hag Stone. You take it out and for some reason, almost without thinking, you lift it up and put it to one eye. At first, everything seems the same path, same trees, same quiet evening. And then it's not movement exactly, but it's just a feeling that something wasn't there a second ago. A figure among the trees, still silent and watching. You blink, lower the stone, and it's gone. You lift it again, and there it is. It's not threatening, just quietly waiting on the edge of somewhere else. According to folklore, by looking through the hole of a Hag Stone, it could reveal things that are usually hidden. So fairies, spirits, ghosts. Some stories even claimed it let you see through disguises entirely. And one creature most often linked with disguised witches was the hare, which we will be getting into next time, because once I started reading about rabbits and hares, I realised they are really interesting and far stranger than I gave them credit for. So I will do a full episode on them. But for now, I like the thought that the world might hold a little more than we normally notice, and that there are loads of stories just tucked beneath the surface of ordinary places, waiting for someone curious to just look a little bit closer. Maybe that's why I love folklore so much, because it does make you see familiar places differently. And after all this, I'm curious, if you were walking on your own down a path late at night, would you look through a Hag Stone? I think I would want to, just because what if? And while we've been talking, the painting's nearly done. When I first sketched this out, I knew I wanted the Hag Stone to be the centre of the whole story, and I wanted the inside of the stone to show where the other world begins. And I like the idea that the stone doesn't create the magic, it just lets you catch a glimpse of something that might have been there all along. So fairies, spirits, or just imagination, I will leave that one up to you. But what I've loved most about this story is just how something so ordinary gathered so many different beliefs around it. So a sailor, a farmer, a mother, they're all trusting the same talisman. And somewhere on some lonely path, someone once paused, looked through that little hole, and wondered if they'd seen something they weren't meant to. So next time you're walking along a beach or along a stream, keep an eye on the ground. If you find a Hag Stone, maybe you'll understand why people treasured them for so long. And who knows, you might find yourself holding it up on a moonlit night just to see.
So here's the Hag Stone print and its matching sticker. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to own any folklore inspired artwork, then my shop is linked below. I'd also love to know in the comments if you've ever found a Hag Stone, if you have one, did you look through it, what did you see? Please let me know, because I always love reading the comments. And next time, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking into a couple of Britain's fairly common animals, the rabbit and the hare. At first glance they might seem completely ordinary, but as you start digging into the folklore, there's a lot more to uncover. This includes witches, bad omens, and strange encounters. If you've enjoyed exploring British folklore and doing a little bit of painting with me, then I'd love for you to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for spending so much time with me, and I will see you next time.
And here's a secret update of my dog. His name is Howl, named after Howl's Moving Castle. And here he is just relaxing and living his best life.